Bryce Laspisa wasn't the same person he had been just weeks earlier. The 20-year-old college sophomore had always been a creative, easygoing guy and aspiring artist studying graphic design at Sierra College in Rocklin, California. But in the days leading up to his disappearance, something shifted. His friends noticed it first. Bryce had started acting erratically, staying up for days at a time, skipping classes, and drinking heavily. His roommate Sean would later reveal that Bryce had been taking Vyvanse, a prescription stimulant often used for ADHD, but in high doses, Vyvanse can cause paranoia, hallucinations, and psychosis. Then Bryce did something completely out of character. He gave away his belongings. His expensive diamond earrings, gone. His Xbox, he handed it over to his roommate without explanation. And just like that, he dumped his girlfriend, Kim, over the phone. No warning, no reason, just cold and sudden. Kim was concerned. Bryce was saying things that didn't make sense. He told her she'd be better off without him. What did that mean? Was he planning something? The worry grew when, on August 28th, Bryce drove to Kim's apartment late at night hours away from his campus and told her he had something important to talk about. But when he arrived, he sat in his car, silent, staring ahead. When Kim finally got him to speak, he refused to tell her what was wrong. Something was happening inside Bryce's mind. Something dark. Kim was so alarmed that she took his car keys, afraid he wasn't safe to drive. But when Bryce called his mom, Karen, she told Kim to give the keys back, assuming he was just sleep-deprived and emotional. So Kim handed them over. Bryce got in his car, and he started driving, but he never arrived. Bryce should have been home by early morning. The drive from Rocklin to Laguna Niguel should have taken 7 hours max. But instead of heading straight down Interstate 5, Bryce stopped for hours. By the time morning arrived, he was in Buttonwillow, a small, dusty truck stop town off the highway. And there he just sat in his car. This wasn't just a short break. Bryce stayed put for nearly 13 hours. Why? At one point, he ran out of gas and called roadside assistance. A man named Christian, a local worker, brought him fuel and even checked on him twice. He told Bryce's mom that her son seemed calm and polite, but when asked why he wasn't driving home, Bryce just shrugged. Even stranger, Bryce told his mom at noon that he was getting back on the road. But 4 hours later, he was still sitting in Buttonwillow. What was he waiting for? Was he afraid of something? Was someone else involved? Finally, at 5:30 in the morning, Bryce called his mom. His voice was steady, clear. He promised he was coming home. His parents believed him. But then, silence. No texts, no calls. At 8 in the morning, a chilling discovery. Bryce's car, a Toyota Highlander, was found wrecked near Castaic Lake, over 100 miles from Buttonwillow. The back window had been shattered, the airbags deployed. His belongings, wallet, phone, laptop, were all inside. But Bryce, nowhere. No blood, no footprints leading away. Just gone. Did Bryce walk away willingly? Did something or someone stop him from making it home? Or did his journey end in a way we'll never understand? The scene was bizarre. Bryce's Toyota Highlander had plummeted down a steep embankment off Lake Hughes Road near Castaic Lake. The crash site looked violent. The back window was shattered, the front end was crushed, and the airbags had deployed. But the car wasn't just abandoned, it had been carefully emptied. Inside, police found his phone, his laptop, his wallet, and his duffel bag all untouched. His ID, his credit cards, everything was there. Nothing had been stolen. No signs of a struggle. No blood. It was as if Bryce had survived the crash and calmly walked away. But if he did, where was he? Investigators noticed something even stranger: the way his car had landed. The crash didn't look like an accident. The tire tracks showed that Bryce had accelerated toward the embankment, as if he was trying to drive off the cliff. Was this an attempt at self harm, or was Bryce trying to stage something before disappearing? Authorities wasted no time. Helicopters hovered overhead. Drones scanned the area. K-9 units picked up a scent. For days, teams searched every inch of Castaic Lake and the rugged canyon surrounding it. Nothing, not a shoe print, not a torn piece of clothing. Divers plunged into the lake, searching the murky depths, expecting to find Bryce's body. But the water held no secrets. There was nothing there. This left investigators with chilling questions. If Bryce was alive, why didn't he call for help? If he was injured, why hadn't he been found? Or had he planned to disappear all along? One theory took root: Bryce never intended to go home. What do you think? If Bryce was in trouble, why did he vanish instead of calling his parents? If you were in his shoes, what would you have done? Then the unthinkable happened. People began seeing him. Several witness reports trickled in over the next few days, all describing a young man with red hair, looking dazed and confused, wandering around the lake area. Was Bryce lost? Was he in shock? Did he even know who he was? But just as suddenly as the sightings appeared, they stopped. No one ever saw him again. It was as if Bryce had evaporated into thin air. So what happened next? Could Bryce still be alive, living under a new identity? Or was he just one step ahead of the search teams, hiding in plain sight? Keep watching, because this case is about to get even stranger. This part of Bryce's story makes no sense. He had been on the road for over 24 hours. He had gas. He had his phone. Nothing was stopping him from driving home, and yet he didn't. Instead, he spent hours parked in a small town Buttonwillow, not sleeping, not making calls, just sitting there. When the roadside assistance worker, Christian, checked on him twice, Bryce was calm, polite. He didn't seem lost or panicked. And when his mom called, he reassured her, saying, "I'm coming home." But he didn't go home. Instead, he waited and waited. What was he waiting for? Was he meeting someone? Or was he scared of something? Then, just before dawn, he finally got back on the highway. What changed? And more importantly, what was going through his mind? Here's where things take a disturbing turn. Instead of heading straight home, Bryce drove south toward Castaic Lake. By 5 a.m., he was there, alone. Then, without warning, his car accelerated toward the steep embankment. It didn't swerve. It didn't brake. The crash wasn't random, it looked deliberate. Did Bryce change his mind about going home? Did he stage an accident only to walk away? If that was his plan, why leave everything behind? His phone, his wallet, his laptop, all untouched. Had he been planning this from the start? Or had something unexpected happened at the last second? What if Bryce survived the crash, but didn't know who he was? There's a rare condition called dissociative fugue, a type of amnesia triggered by extreme stress or trauma. People suffering from fugue states have been known to walk away from their lives completely, sometimes for days, weeks, even years, without remembering who they are. They don't contact family, they don't use their bank accounts, they just start over with no memory of their past. Could this explain why Bryce was reportedly seen wandering near the lake looking dazed? If he hit his head or suffered a psychological break, he may have walked away without realizing he was missing. But if that's true, why has there been no confirmed sighting in over a decade? Did Bryce simply vanish into a new life? Or did his journey take an even darker turn? What do you think? Could Bryce have lost his memory and started over? Or is there something else we're missing? The deeper investigators looked into Bryce's final days, the more unsettling the picture became. His erratic behavior wasn't just a one-time thing, it had been escalating for weeks. His roommate Sean said Bryce had been acting paranoid and was barely sleeping. He had also been taking Vyvanse, a powerful stimulant used to treat ADHD. Vyvanse can have dangerous side effects when misused: insomnia, hallucinations, paranoia, even full-blown psychosis. And Bryce, he had been awake for days. Friends noticed he had started talking strangely, saying things that didn't make sense. He suddenly broke up with his girlfriend. He gave away his belongings, and then he got in his car and drove, but to where and why? Was Bryce running from something? Or was the real danger inside his own mind? Some people believe Bryce wasn't alone that night. Maybe he met someone who led him away from the crash site. Or maybe someone had been following him all along. But here's what makes this even more disturbing: there's no proof of anyone else being involved. No security footage shows him with anyone. No witnesses saw him after the reported sightings near the lake. No phone calls, no texts, no online activity after his final call to his mom. It's as if, after crashing his car, he stepped into the darkness and was erased. If Bryce left with someone, who were they? And more importantly, where did they take him? Could Bryce have drowned in Castaic Lake? It seems like a logical explanation, but there's a problem: the lake was searched extensively. Helicopters scanned the surface. Divers combed the depths. Cadaver dogs sniffed the shoreline. They found nothing. Some experts believe Bryce could have entered the water that night, but bodies don't always surface right away, especially in deep or cold water. Still, his parents don't believe he drowned. If he had gone into the lake, anything should have been found. And then there's the biggest question of all: why? If Bryce was running, why run toward the lake? If he was in distress, why not call for help? Or was someone else there that night, ensuring he never left? What do you think? Could Bryce have drowned? Or is there a reason his body was never found? Could Bryce have vanished on purpose? Some believe he never intended to go home that night. Instead, they think his crash was staged away to make it look like something had happened to him, when in reality, he was already gone. It would explain a lot: his erratic behavior, the way he sat in one spot for hours, the final call to his mom, reassuring her he was coming home. Was that a lie? But here's the biggest problem with this theory: if Bryce ran away, why has he never resurfaced? No activity on his bank accounts, no social security records, no phone calls, no emails, nothing. Most people who run away eventually slip up using a credit card, logging onto social media, contacting someone from their past. But in over a decade, not a single trace of Bryce has ever been found. So if he did run away, how did he manage to erase himself so completely? Bryce's parents have always insisted he wasn't in trouble. They say he had no reason to run. But online sleuths aren't convinced. Could Bryce have been hiding something? Something that made disappearing the only way out. We know he had started behaving strangely, but was it just the Vyvanse and sleep deprivation, or was something deeper going on? Some theories suggest he might have been in debt, involved with dangerous people, or running from a threat his family never knew about. If that's true, it could explain why he was so reluctant to go home. But again, there's no evidence, no shady connections, no secret debts, nothing in his past that points to danger. So if Bryce was running, what was he running from? Looking back at Bryce's final days, it almost feels like he was leaving clues behind, giving away his belongings, breaking up with his girlfriend, acting distant, detached, almost like he was saying goodbye. Was he planning something all along, or were these warning signs of a mental break? If Bryce staged his own disappearance, where did he go? If he suffered a mental break and wandered away, why has he never been found? And if someone else was involved, why hasn't any evidence surfaced? What do you think? Was Bryce planning to disappear, or was his fate decided by something or someone else? Every disappearance has loose ends, but Bryce Laspisa's case, it's a maze of contradictions, a puzzle where every piece leads to more confusion. First, there's Button Willow. Why did he sit there for 13 hours? Why didn't he sleep? Why didn't he call a friend? Was he waiting for someone or trying to make up his mind? Then there's the crash. Did he lose control, or was it intentional? If he was trying to stage his own disappearance, why leave all his belongings behind? If he survived, why hasn't he ever reached out? But the most unsettling question of all, why has there never been a single confirmed sighting? Most missing persons cases generate at least a few leads: credit card use, a security camera hit, an eyewitness who swears they saw something. But with Bryce, nothing. It's as if the moment he stepped away from his car, he vanished into the void. Investigators believe the simplest explanation is the right one. Bryce walked away on his own. But his parents don't believe it. They insist Bryce had no reason to run, no history of mental illness, no deep secrets he was hiding. And even if he had suffered a breakdown, where did he go? Why hasn't he ever resurfaced? And then there's the darker theories. Some internet sleuths believe Bryce hitchhiked, maybe accepting a ride from a stranger. Did he get picked up by someone with bad intentions? Did he willingly leave with a person he had been in contact with? Or did he meet the wrong person at the wrong time? Others have suggested an even stranger possibility that something paranormal was at play. Why was Bryce acting so erratically? Why did he sit in Button Willow for hours as if he was in a trance? Why did he accelerate toward the embankment as if he was running from something we can't see? It sounds like a wild theory until you remember how many cases of unexplained vanishings share similar eerie details. Bryce's parents believe he's still out there. The police, they aren't so sure. Could Bryce still be alive? Some believe he's out there wandering, lost, maybe suffering from amnesia or a dissociative episode. Others think he started over, assuming a new identity, leaving his old life behind. But if that were true, how has he managed to stay off the grid for more than a decade? Then there is the possibility no one wants to accept that he never made it far from his car. Maybe he succumbed to the elements, injured and unable to call for help. Maybe he drowned in Castaic Lake, his body never recovered. Maybe something happened to him that night that will never be fully explained. One thing is certain: Bryce Laspisa didn't just vanish. Something happened, and until we have answers, his case will remain one of the most chilling and perplexing disappearances of our time. Years have passed since the night Bryce Laspisa disappeared, yet his case remains one of the most baffling mysteries in true crime history. No new leads, no confirmed sightings, no answers. At first, search efforts were relentless. Hundreds of people combed the terrain, hoping for a clue. Investigators followed every possible lead, but each one led to nothing. As time passed, the theories grew wilder. Some believe Bryce started a new life, completely off the grid. Others think he may have succumbed to the elements, his body hidden in the unforgiving wilderness. But here's the question that haunts everyone who has followed this case. If Bryce is still out there, does he even want to be found? His parents refuse to give up. They believe he's alive, maybe struggling with memory loss, maybe afraid to come home, but still out there somewhere. Yet with each passing year, the hope fades just a little more. Did Bryce Laspisa disappear by choice? Or is the truth much darker than we've ever imagined? Bryce Laspisa's case defies logic. A young man acting strangely. A long, aimless drive. A car wrecked, but no blood, no injuries, no signs of a body. And then, nothing. It's as if he simply stepped into the night and ceased to exist. So now we ask the questions that still have no answers. Did Bryce Laspisa walk away on his own, or was he taken? Is he out there somewhere, alive but lost, or hiding from something we can't see? Or was this a case of a mind unraveling until the truth vanished forever? This case remains open. The mystery remains unsolved. And until the day Bryce is found dead or alive, the questions will never stop.